Hello nerds and nerdettes, and welcome back to the channel where once again we have a new video for you guys. We are quickly approaching the new year, or maybe you're already in the new year depending on when you're watching this. Hello in the future. But as we wrap up with 2024, I'm going to start a series of videos like I did last year, going over my top 5 releases and reads from each of the publishers that I collect, and then eventually I will jump into my top 10 reads of the entire year of 2024. Today's video is going to be the first installment of that series of videos, which is going to be my top 5 image/smaller publishers releases/reads of the year. That was a lot of slashes. Now, before we jump into the list, a quick reminder that we do have a sponsor here on the channel, which is organicpricebooks.com. You can use the discount code staynerdy to save yourself $2 on an order, or when ordering 4 or more books, you can use the code staynerdyshipittogether to save yourself 5% on that entire order. It's a great way to save yourself some money, but also help out the channel. So thank you to any of you guys that do decide to use that code. But let's go ahead and jump into the list, starting with, of course, number 5. And first up in the number 5 spot is Rat Queens in the Image Shadowline Omnibus. Whatever that means, I don't know, but there are some beautiful deluxe editions out there. There are trade paperbacks, and of course, you can read this digitally. To my knowledge, the Omnibus does collect the most issues and complete the series when it comes to the physical format, so that's why I went this route. But of course, you can collect it in any way that you deem fit, as long as you read it, because it's that good. This is written by Curtis J. Weib, or Weeb, I apologize if I am butchering that, and Rock Upchurch, with a whole slew of artists, which I will get into why that kind of works for this specific title as we continue on into the synopsis of the book. Essentially what this is a high fantasy style of story that is very reminiscent of Dungeons and Dragons, an RPG-like style of stories where you have a rotating cast of party members that all have skills and characteristics that lend together when it comes to the group. But what you're going to do is you're going to take that type of story and then inject it with tons and tons of crude humor, blood and gore, adult activities, nudity, drugs, you name it, it's in here. So this is not for my squeamish readers that are not fans of reading about those things, whether you're a high fantasy fan or not, because all of those things are very much present when it comes to every aspect of this story. So be aware of that, but it is so good at the same time. This story is incredibly human despite it being in a high fantasy setting. You do follow at first the 4 original Rat Queens, which is Hannah, who is a elvish-like magician. She's probably my favorite character. She has a lot of complexities to her character as well. And then you do have Violet, who is a dwarven warrior. She is an awesome character and takes part in a lot of the action that takes place in here. Then you do have Dee, who is a human cultist. She's a little bit more of your serious character. A lot of the more serious elements of this story do focus on her in a lot of times. And then you have Betty, who is a dwarf thief who loves to partake in hallucinogenics. So she is going to be your comedic relief. All 4 of these characters are going to come together and go on a multitude of quests, and it has everything you could want, whether it is vampires, kingdoms at war, orcs, elves, you name it. It's in here. It takes place in here. There is a lot of humor, but there's also a lot of very serious stories in here as well that I think are so awesome to explore, especially with this band of misfits that you get to learn about and become friends with and love each of them for their own specific reasons, because they're all such different characters. You do have 2 other honorary Rat Queens, which is Barga and Madeline. They kind of come in, and then some of them leave, some of them not, trying to avoid spoilers there. And that takes place because of one of the Rat Queens leaving the group for a little bit, and it is such a heartfelt reason why. And then on top of that, the end of this specific series is incredibly heartfelt. It is so beautiful, makes you feel warm and fuzzy, and cheering in the name of friendship. So it is a story that I highly recommend. It's a feel-good story with dark tones, dark elements, and dark stories, but overall the book is about humanity. It's about being human, whether they are human or not, and it's about friendship, and it is so awesome. Highly recommend reading it if you haven't already. I'm so pumped I have a chance to talk about this book on the channel because I haven't yet. But if you have already read Rat Queens, comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Share your thoughts to the community because your opinion matters just as much as mine. Next up at the number 4 spot is I Hate Fairyland by Skottie Young. I have this collected in the 2 deluxe editions from Image. This Volume 1 is a little hard to come by. Volume 2, not as much, but there are other formats to read this in. Tons of formats, if I remember correctly, so read it in the format that you deem worthy. Essentially, what you will have here is yet another, which maybe you can follow a theme here, yet another fantasy setting following the character of Gertrude, who is a young girl playing with her imagination, imagining fairyland until she suddenly gets sucked into fairyland and ends up being stuck there for 28 years. And as a now 30-year-old woman, she still looks like a young girl because nobody ages in fairyland. So she does have a mind of a 30-year-old, a very hateful and jaded 30-year-old, but she is in the body of a young girl. And it is so funny. There's so much humor in here, tons of blood and gore again. A lot of those fantasy elements from fairies, unicorns, zombies, orcs, goblins, all of these things, but they are all beautifully illustrated by Skottie Young, who lends his very much cartoon-like art style beautifully to the story and shows us exactly what fairyland would look like in a very childlike way, and it is so awesome, despite this not being a child's book or child style of story at all, because like I said, there is tons of action in here, tons of blood and gore, and Gertrude releases her hatred for fairyland in a multitude of ways. So I highly recommend this. It is so meta as well. The ending, specifically the ending, is one of the most meta endings I've ever seen in comic books, and there's a lot of meta endings or meta references in comic books in general, but this one is so awesome, so much fun. It's very reminiscent of She-Hulk with John Byrne, but it is a lot more on the nose, and I absolutely love it. I think Skottie Young's art isn't for everybody, but in this specific style of story and what this story is about, I think it works magnificently, and it is such an incredible story. If you want to have a laugh, but also get kind of squeamished out or get all icky because of all the blood and gore and killing that is taking place, then check out I Hate Fairyland because it is really a lot of fun. And here we are at the number 3 spot with Sex Criminals by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky. These are the 3 deluxe editions. I want to say volumes 1 and 2 are pretty easy to come by. Volume 3, not so much, but I could be wrong. But either way, there's other formats you can read this in. Tons of formats when it comes to comics these days, so you don't need to read it in these deluxe editions. But one thing I do want to make note of, which I've mentioned in a video before, is that the deluxe editions do have a little detail that I absolutely love, which is under the dust jacket. When you remove the dust jacket, it doesn't say Sex Criminals. Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky try to protect you in public, and instead they put a alternate title that is full of innuendos. They even put blurbs on the back that is also full of innuendos. So I absolutely love that addition to these deluxe editions, but you can read it in any other format because the story is what matters in the end. So essentially what we have here is a story that follows Susie and John, who find out they have the ability to freeze time when they finish. Yes, you are hearing me correctly. I don't know how else to tiptoe around the synopsis, but that is the synopsis. Now, you do follow Susie and John as they develop their relationship, as they find out that they both share this ability, and what they decide to do with that ability. With a name that is Sex Criminals, you can probably guess some of the hijinks that they get up to when they freeze time. This is written by Matt Fraction, who's very well known in the world of comics, especially over at Marvel, who's done Hawkeye, he's done Iron Fist, he's done Thor. But you have Chip Zdarsky, who's one of the hottest names when it comes to writing comic books right now in comics, writing Batman. He wrote Daredevil, both highly acclaimed runs, but he is actually the artist on this book, and he is a phenomenal artist, absolutely phenomenal. This is another book that is incredibly human. What they do with these abilities to process their trauma, their heartache, is so relatable, so awesome. Things that while you're reading, you would probably say you would do if you had those abilities. But then on top of that, when things start to get rough and life starts to not exactly go their way, they then decide to use their abilities in other ways. And there's a whole multitude of other elements and layers to the story. That is 100% the surface layer, but that is all I'm going to reveal at this point because it is that good, and I want you guys to read it and experience it for yourself. The relationship between Susie and John is so touching. It's heartfelt, makes you feel warm and fuzzy. It's relatable. It is so great. Highly recommend reading this, especially for anybody that is a fan of Matt Fraction or Chip Zdarsky, because even though Chip's doing art through here, he was helping a lot when it comes to the story and the humor elements. So check it out. It is a great, great read. And at the number 2 spot is a journey that you guys have been going along with me throughout the videos of 2024, and that is the Power Rangers Deluxe Editions by Boom Studios. These are some of my favorite books in my collection when it comes to the aesthetics of these books and the spines, which you are seeing here. This is a total of 10 books that I collected throughout the year, and they were out of print for a very, very, very long time, but they have been coming back into print kind of secretly. I haven't seen any announcements. They've just kind of been popping up either on Amazon or other distributors. So I've been picking them up as quickly as I can because this series is so good. If you're a Power Rangers fan, this is something you need to be reading. This adds so much to the Power Rangers lore, to the Power Rangers characters and roster that we all know and love. You need to read this. It is so good. There's other formats out there. You don't need to get these deluxe editions, but it is such an incredible story. This first book here kind of starts off as a kind of typical Power Ranger story, follows the Power Rangers doing their Power Ranger thing, fighting monsters, Rita Repulsa, monsters get big, they fight the monsters in their Megazords. It is the original Power Rangers cast, so you do have Jason, Billy, Zach, Kimmy, Trini, Tommy, all of the characters that you know and love. But by the end of this book, we jump into the Shattered Grid event, which is a Power Ranger specific event that was taking place in these titles. And it is so good. The antagonist of Shattered Grid is a potentially familiar face that wields a absolutely incredible power and is ruling a alternate future with a iron fist, and you get to follow the Power Rangers as they decide what to do with this character and how to fight back. But the part that I enjoy the most is you get to dive into the Morphing Grid, which is essentially the multiverse of the Power Rangers world. So what you're going to be seeing is a multitude of teams that you probably know and love from the TV shows, maybe some other comic book series, but you're also going to be seeing a bunch of teams that you've never heard of. You're going to be seeing some alternate versions of teams you do know flipped onto their head, and you're also going to be seeing some teams that consist of members that have been plucked through time and put together to create a new team. So you have tons of fan service here, a lot of fun, a lot of exploration of the Power Ranger lore and world, and it is so awesome. There is so much action in here, and you can tell that they took Power Rangers and injected it with the right amount of maturity, because while this can still be read by I would say, fairly young readers. There's not a bunch of blood and gore or cursing or anything along those lines. This does have a level of maturity where it reads beautifully for a older reader, and I think that makes it that much more better because of the dark elements, the thought and possibility of these characters that you know and love being at risk of dying, of not coming back, because there is nobody that is safe through this series, and it is so awesome to see. I think this is a series that should go down in history, that rejuvenated the Power Ranger name, the Power Ranger title series. This is what put Power Rangers back on the map after kind of being a little kind of quiet there for a while until Boom started releasing these comic books. But such great stuff. These deluxe editions are beautiful. I'm technically up to date, up to current of these deluxe editions that have been released. The last one was this book 3 that was released, I want to say 2 months ago maybe, but man, it is so good. Highly recommend it to Power Rangers readers. But if you're a fan of multiverse stuff, superhero stuff, there will be something for you in this title. And at the number 1 spot is the Scott Pilgrim 20th Anniversary box set. This is written and drawn by Brian Lee O'Malley, and the box set itself is released by Oni Press. This has to be the release of the year for me personally. There is so much thought put into the designing of this box set, of this release, for lovers of pop culture, lovers of comic books, video games, manga, art, you name it. There is so much love and care put into the designing of these books and of this specific box set. So beautiful. They knocked it out of the park, but I don't want Scott Pilgrim's story to be put on the back burner by any means. Scott Pilgrim is an incredible story where you follow the character of Scott Pilgrim, who is a band member of a garage band called the Sex Bombs, as he struggles with life and the trials and tribulations of being in love with a character by the name of Ramona. And on top of that, we then inject it with a level of pop culture fandom where in order for Scott Pilgrim to date Ramona, he has to defeat her 7 evil exes. And it is illustrated and drawn almost like a video game or manga, where there's health bars, one-ups and lives, weapons with superpowers and super abilities, action sequences where people are throwing kicks and punches and bouncing off of walls and wielding weapons. So much fan service when it comes to pop culture in general, and Brian Lee O'Malley knew exactly what he was doing, because then on top of that, there is a human level added to this story where you find yourself kind of wondering about these characters, wondering if Scott Pilgrim is that much of a good dude, if he deserves the happy ending. Is he a scumbag or is he a hero? You have to read and find out and decide for yourself. But collecting it in this edition is one edition I do highly recommend. This book is designed, or this box set rather, not book, is designed in a way that it looks like a game system's box. A game system console is going to be inside, but inside are the hardcovers for the series, as well as an extra volume that collects a handful of character designs and short stories. Then you get prints and stickers. Even the instructions of the box are designed to look like a game console's instructions. There's so much fun and thought put into the design of this, and that is why I love this box set so much. I'm a huge fan of box sets in general, if I'm being honest, but this rivals the Akira 75th Anniversary box set, which for years now has been the best box set in the game, at least in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions. But this is getting very close to taking the throne from that Akira box set, because it is that awesome, that beautiful. They even released 2 editions of this box set, one in color, which I do think lends a little bit more to the story, especially a very gamey / cartoony style of story that Scott Pilgrim is. But The title was originally released in black and white, and there is a black and white box set that has all of Scott Pilgrim collected in the original black and white style that it was originally released in. So really, really cool. So much thought-provoking stuff. So much love to fans of Scott Pilgrim comics and everything. It is such a great buy. I highly recommend it if you guys haven't bought it already. There's so much bang for your buck here. You really feel like they care about you as a consumer, which always feels kind of nice. And then on top of that, you get an incredible story, which is Scott Pilgrim. So that's why it's at my #1 spot. Highly recommend this edition, but read Scott Pilgrim if you haven't already, and then decide if you want the box set. But that does wrap up today's video covering my top 5 image/smaller/indie books that were released or picked up during the month of 2024. Man, this video was so fun to make. A lot of these books I haven't talked about on the channel before, despite me being huge fans of the title or loving my reading experience. So here I am finally getting the chance to talk about titles like Rat Queens, Sex Criminals, Power Rangers, Scott Pilgrim. So comment down below, let me know what your top 5 indie/image books of the year were. I'd love to hear from you guys. You guys put books on my radar to pick up, and I am so thankful for that because you guys give me a endless reading log, which is what I love the most because I just love reading comics. But if you are not a member of the community, hit that subscribe button to join the community. And if you could do me a favor and hit that thumbs up icon, it really, really means a lot to us on the channel. And if you don't want to miss a video, you can ring that bell for notifications. But thank you for watching once again. I appreciate you guys tuning in to hear me gush about comics. And of course, stay nerdy.